looking at the snake it's a small act of obedience, if you can call it that. You know, it's not like God said, obey me. He would have used that. You know, obey me and look at the snake. No, I mean, He just said, look and live. Just look at it. And there's faith there. And I don't even know if there's trust. I mean, it's just kind of like, all right, I'll look. Because I'm dying. I'm dying. I'm going to die. Then he looked. He got good. I'm going to look. There's no obedience in that. There's barely faith. Because it's not based on us. Divine healing in your life has nothing to do with you or I. Nothing. It has everything to do with Christ. You know, everything to do with Him. Everything to do with Him. And so He says, look and live. Look and live. From the stroke of disease and death, through the sting of Satan and the poison of sin, the promise with them was to look and live. In 2 Chronicles chapter 16, verses 1 to 2, we have a story about somebody who didn't look and therefore didn't live. He didn't look and he didn't live. It's the story of King Asa. And I just want to read these 12 verses to us. 2 Chronicles 16, verses 1 to 12. In the 36th year of Asa's reign, Baasha, king of Israel, went up against Judah and fortified Ramah to prevent anyone from leaving or entering the territory of Asa, king of Judah. There's a little battle going on, and what Asa does is interesting. He takes the silver and the gold out of the treasuries of the Lord's temple and of his own palace, and he sends them to Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, who was ruling in Damascus. So there's a little battle going on. Asa takes the silver and the gold out of the treasuries of the Lord's temple and of his own palace. He gets the resources of God. He taps the offering. The offering goes by that day. He says, I'm going to take some of this. I need to be healed. My insurance policy is not covering it. He takes his own, he sells everything he has, and he's going to fight this battle, and he's going to make a treaty. Verse 3, let there be a treaty between me and you, he says to this king, as there was between my father and your father. See, I am sending you silver and gold. Now break your treaty with the other king, so he will withdraw from me. So he finds a friend of this other king. He makes a treaty with them. He gives him silver and gold. He even steals gold from God. And he makes a treaty with this guy to go and tell this guy to pull back. Okay? So I will be safe. It says, Ben-Hadad agreed, verse 4, with King Asa, and sent the commander of his forces against the towns of Israel. They conquered Ijon, Dan, Abel, Maim, and all the cities, all the store cities of Naphtali. When Baasha heard this, he stopped building Ramah and abandoned his work. Then King Asa brought all the men of Judah, and they carried away from Ramah the stones and timber that Baasha had been using, and with them he built up Geba and Mizpah. At that time, Hanani the seer came to Asa the king of Judah and said to him, and he's getting this from a seer, from a psychic, because you relied on the king of Aram and not on the Lord your God, the army of the king of Aram has escaped from your hand. So all these little plans that we heard in the context that there's not enough time to describe, the bottom line is that this king did not rely on the Lord his God, but he relied on his own plans. And so this army has escaped from his hand. And then the seer says, listen, we're not the Cushites and the Libyans, a mighty army with great numbers of chariots and horsemen. Yet, when you relied on the Lord, He delivered them into your hand. You see, for the eyes of the Lord range throughout the earth, to strengthen those whose hearts are fully committed to Him. You have done a foolish thing, and from now on you will be at war. So King Asa took things into his own hands. He didn't rely on the Lord one bit when it came to this battle over here. In verse 10 it says, Asa was angry with the seer because of this. He was so enraged that he put him in prison. And at the same time, Asa was brutally oppressed by some of the people. That poor seer. Put in prison for telling the truth. Verse 11. The events of Asa's reign from the beginning to end are written in the book of the kings of Judah and Israel. And in the 39th year of his reign, Asa was afflicted with a disease in his feet. And though his disease was severe, even in his illness, he did not seek help from the Lord, but only from the physicians. Asa is not punished here from not looking at the physicians, but Asa's consequence, the consequence of him not looking to the Lord, is that he didn't live. That even though his disease was severe, even in his illness, he did not seek help from the Lord, but only from the physicians. You know, C.S. Lewis said that God screams to us through our sicknesses, through our diseases, through our physical trials. That in good times, we kind of hear whispers from God. But in really bad times, it's like God screaming to get your attention. He's screaming at you. And it says basically here that even when God was screaming at Asa, he didn't even turn to the Lord and look to the Lord for help. I'm always amazed that when people go through traumatic circumstances, how they don't look to the Lord. It's like unbelievable. It's like God's doing all He can to get your attention, and yet you're not looking to Him. I've seen wonderful times where people do respond and realize, oh my goodness, I have nothing. I can only look to the Lord. And the Lord is welcoming of that, isn't He? That even when we have nothing, He just wants us to look to Him. And so He welcomes those who have just realized their bout with cancer is almost done, and they've got to look to the Lord. And the Lord looks to them and shows favor and heals and loves. Ultimately brings the ultimate healing of eternal life. Look and live is the message of the gospel. It's the message of Jesus Christ, to look and live. Isaiah chapter 53, verse 4 to 6, he prophesied of Jesus, and he said this, "Surely He took up our infirmities and carried our sorrows, yet we considered Him stricken by God, smitten by God, and afflicted. But He was pierced for our transgressions, He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was upon Him, and by His wounds," folks, we are healed. This is talking about a physical healing. A physical healing. And I think you and I, because of how we're made up, sometimes have just made healing about spiritual. Or maybe just about emotional. But we've stopped short of giving God the place in our life to heal us physically. In John chapter 3, verse 14 and 15, Jesus speaks of Himself and says, "If I will be lifted up, everyone who believes in Me may have eternal life." And then in Matthew chapter 8, verse 16 to 17, in one sense it sums up Christ's life. You know of His miracles, you've heard of them, you've read about them, but in Matthew 8, it says, "When evening came, many who were demon-possessed were brought to Him, and He drove out the spirits with a word and healed all the sick. And this was to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet Isaiah. He took up our infirmities and carried our diseases." Do you know that the Jews believed that even the Messiah was to have healing in His spit? And what did Jesus do? He said, "I'll show you that I'm the Messiah." He spits on some dirt, and He makes some mud, and creates a nice little mud mask for some blind men. And they go away healed. Because there's even healing in Jesus' spit. That's how easy it is for Him. We've made healing difficult for God in our lives. When it's so easy. When it's so easy that it's a glance at Him and you'll live. The centurion's servant knew how easy it would be. No, you don't have to come. You don't have to come and heal my son. I'm a man of authority too. Just say the word. Just say the word and he'll be healed miles and miles away. I know it. And so as the centurion left Jesus, his servant came running to him and said, "Your son's healed." What time? What time did he get healed? Man, the same time that he was with Jesus. Jesus spoke the word. It's that easy for Him. It's that easy for Him. That Jesus Christ is our healer. And then that's part of this gospel, folks.